أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد آتينا إبراهيم رشده من قبل وكنا به عالمين. There is an important concept or a term in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this repeatedly, and that is the word rushd. The literal translation for rushd is maturity. Now there are two kinds of maturities. One is the biological maturity, when we reach the age of puberty. It is the adulthood. It is the biological adulthood that we reach. Is that what Quran emphasizes on? Because this is by default, every human being eventually reaches the age of puberty and is considered to be mature. But Quran is not emphasizing on this, rather emphasizing on something more important. When it says maturity, it means our cognitive ability, our understanding, my mental capacity, how I perceive this world, how I sense this world, and what do I think inside. When I reach a capacity with aptitude and a proneness to run my own affair in the best way possible, in a successful way. This is considered to be maturity, meaning that I use my rationality, I use my intellect, I use my mental ability to meet the challenges, in my daily life. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it maturity, or rushd. The term in Arabic, it says rushd. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the prophets, peace be upon them, who were thousands upon thousands, 124,000 prophets, all of those prophets came to the world, came to the humanity, to foster and nurture this concept within a human being, to nurture the ability of people to comprehend, to understand, to use their own mind. A few nights ago, on the third night of Al-Qadr, I spoke about Quran. If you remember, I said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through Quran, revealing the Holy Quran as the last miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the message of the Prophet, peace be upon him, has respected a human being, promoting a human being, giving Quran. Just simply, how is it important? We say that Quran is a miracle of the Prophet, peace be upon him, meaning a sign that the Prophet will tell people that I am connected to the Lord, I am connected to the Creator of this universe. Now, what were other prophets' miracles? For example, what was the miracle of Jesus? What was the miracle of Moses? What were those miracles? Moses used to grab the stick. As he kicked the stick on the ground, it would be changed to a huge serpent. Now everybody, all would see this huge serpent. Whether you are an intellectual or you are an illiterate, whether you are a worker or you are a philosopher, or a college level student or you are no education, the understanding of that miracle to all were the same. We see a serpent. I see it a serpent, you see it a serpent, you see it a serpent. We understand this is a straightforward, miracle. It is something beyond the capability of a human being. The same thing with Jesus. What he used to do, he would grab pieces of the clay, put them together, then he would blow on them and they all changed to bird. As an audience, as a receiver, all people would see this in equal eyes. whether I am an educated or illiterate, both, all would see this, up front in their eyes, straightforward. Doesn't require more explanation. Doesn't require more intelligence. Doesn't require more work. Shukran, Sayyid. Doesn't require more work of the mind and the brain. But when Quran came as a miracle of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he say that it's miracle, who can understand this as a miracle? Can an illiterate person who doesn't know about reading and writing and about philosophy or about Arabic and the eloquence of Arabic, can he tell that Quran is miracle or not? Obviously he cannot. Who can tell? Someone who uses his mind. Someone who forces his mind and intellect to work in order to find, oh, this Quran is different from the rest of the books. That's why we say that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought up Quran to the populace, to the masses of people, He did that as an honor to people. Because what set me different from the rest of the animals is this mind. This one. So God has honored me by allowing me to use my mind, to find that Quran is, a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I am trying to say is that through the prophets, through the messages of God, through the holy books, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to foster the concept of maturity within human beings. To bring them up to become mature, to become rational, to use their mind. Why? Because the humans are better served when they become mature. At that time, they understand their surroundings. They understand the tricks. They understand the fake, distinguish the fake from something that is authentic. They can distinguish between right and wrong, between evil and good. Through what? Through this concept of rushd and maturity. On the contrary, the despot, the dictators, those who opposed and challenged the prophets, they on the contrary want people not to use their mind, not to make them aware of things, keep them at a very low level of intelligence without challenging them into using their minds. Why? Because this dictator, this despot wants to govern. He wants to subjugate people. He wants to exploit them. He wants to take and plunder their resources. So if me as a pupil think and use my mind, I realize that this guy is a crook. Therefore I have to fight him. Therefore it is in the interest of the dictators and despots and those who were opposing the prophets not to allow people to think. Rather keep them, without thought, without understanding. The biggest problem that faced the humanity is when I choose some entity other than God as a worship. When I go and choose a superstitious religion, a mythic religion. Why? Because I don't have enough maturity. Because my mind has not thought well that this is not the right thing that I'm doing. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ibrahim alayhi salam. He said that we gave Ibrahim the level of maturity. We brought him to become mature. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ رُشْدًا. He became so mature and so intellectual. When did he happen to have this? When he realized that those idols are nothing but statues. Feckless, helpless statues, that they cannot do anything, that they cannot repel harm from themselves, nor they can gain any good for themselves. At that time, when he realized that those are nothing, that he had been fooled and his people had been fooled, astaghfirullah, Ibrahim never got fooled, but what he see, that the people of his hometown or the culture had been fooled by praying to those idols, when he realized this and showed it to them vividly, he practiced that when he grabbed the axe and destroyed all those idols. When they caught him and told him, who did this to those idols? He said, go and ask the big one. It must be the big idol who destroyed the rest of the idols. They told him, how, the idol cannot do this, the statue cannot do this. He said that if he cannot do this, how would you worship? How would you worship and pray to something that he or it cannot do anything, cannot protect itself, cannot repel harm against, from itself, or gain anything beneficial for itself? You see, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ وَقَوْمِهِ مَا هَذِهِ التَّمَاثِيلُ الَّتِي أَنْتُمْ لَهَا عَاكِفُونَ. What is the story? What is about it that you stand up in front of those statues and you pray for them? Those that cannot save you, they cannot save themselves, let alone you. You see, at that time was the sign of maturity of Ibrahim, who discerned, who could tell the difference between the Lord and between some feckless, hopeless statues. It is narrated that one day an Arab nomad, Arabs before, they used to create their own idols. They would make them, either they use rocks, sometimes they use wood, sometimes brass, sometimes even a fruit. Out of dated fruit, they make an idol, a statue. And they pray to this statue all day long. At night, let's say this statue is outside, outdoor, they get this statue inside to protect it, because this idol by itself cannot protect itself. Therefore, they get it inside for the safety. Some of them were expensive. Someone will come and steal them, take them away. Now one day, one Arab nomad who had his idol, every day would worship, he and his family. One day he forgot to bring the idol inside. Now, when he got up next day in the morning, he saw a fox stepping on the head of the idol and urinating on the idol. At that time he was shaken. He said, if this idol were good enough, they should have repelled, this humiliating things by themselves. Not allowing this little creature, this little animal, the fox, to urinate on them. He said, أَرَبٌّ يَبُولُ الثَّعْلَبَانِ بِرَأْسِهِ أَلَا ذَلَّ مَنْ بَانَتْ عَلَيْهِ تَعَالَوْا. What kind of God is this? What kind of an idol is this that cannot repel the harm of a single fox? And he changed his mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when you use this, when you try to use this one, the brain, the intellect, the criteria that sets you in difference with the rest of the creatures, at that time you reach the level of maturity. At that time you become rational. At that time you have a proneness and aptitude to run your own affair. This is the message of the ayah. Now, how do we reach this level of maturity? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers this is the level of maturity, this is the intellectual thing, step or point that you need to get to. What are the conditions? What are the indicators to reach the level of maturity? I will tell you after your big and loud salawat. There are a few indicators, brothers and sisters. You can apply it to anyone. You can apply it to yourself. You can apply it to others to decide if the person really has maturity or not. Number one, brothers and sisters, it is the awareness. Being well informed and educated. When I have enough awareness about my surroundings, I have enough knowledge about myself, about my environment, about my country, as well as others, I can protect myself. You see, one biggest change, one of the hugest changes or differences, let's say, between a third world country and an advanced country. What is the difference? The difference is when you go to their universities. When you go to their universities, you see each university, they have study groups. They have department to studying what? Studying Far East countries or Far West countries. You tell them Myanmar, they tell you, okay, come to us and we'll show you how many volumes of pages that we have made studies about Myanmar. Probably you don't know where Myanmar is. Okay? But they have went into pain of studying others as well as themselves. Therefore, you see the huge gap between us and them. Why? Because I am unaware. I don't know where am I going. I go to the masjid. Where are the doors of the masjid? Where is the exit? Where is the entrance? Where is the safe passage? While he knows all of those things. This person can grasp, can handle himself much better than someone who's completely unknown. When you are, when you are equipped with knowledge and information. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this beautiful concept. It says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. If you want to see a pious, if you want to see someone who's a believer, who believes in God, who's muttaqi, who's pious and righteous, look at the level of his knowledge. The one who fears God is the one who has full of knowledge. The most knowledgeable person, the most well-informed person is the one who's the pious, who's the righteous, who fears God. See, striking an equation between fearing God, being religious, and being believer, with the, go hand in hand with knowledge and information. The more information I have, the better I will be equipped to combat the challenges, combat the problems that arise. Unfortunately, when you see the Arabic countries or the Islamic countries, you will be ashamed. The illiteracy rate within the Arab population is more than 40%. Meaning 40% of the population, for men, they are illiterate, they cannot read and write. For women, is 60%. 60% in our Arab world, we have illiteracy within the female population, about 60%. And male population, about 40%. Almost nearly half of the population are illiterate. They don't know how to read and write. Someone who doesn't read and write, who is not well informed, how can he go and find someone, an enemy that is so sophisticated, so intelligent, and so well equipped? Is there a match between the two? You don't see that. On the contrary, you see the superstitions, the myth that is so spread, in the Islamic world. Here, let me read some of those. According to the National Center of Research and Development in Egypt, this is a government institution in Egypt. They say that in the country there are 250,000 swindlers, charlatans, or crooks. You know what a crook is? He comes and tells you, oh, I'm a magician. I will do something that you are incapable of doing. Those are nothing but crooks. They say that in this country, and this is only a single country, out of the huge Arab land, the huge, motherland of the Arabic motherland, more than 250,000 of them, there are crooks, and they just abuse people, mentally abuse them. Now, what is the income of those? This business has a revenue. They say with an annual budget income of $5 billion. What do they do? You know what I mean. You know the palm reading, the fortune telling, the horoscope. How many of us buy the newspaper or the magazine just to go to the horoscope and read what is my horoscope today? What is this? This is nothing but superstition. I pay this worthless magazine or newspaper in order just to go and read my horoscope and be happy with my... Have you ever seen a horoscope that tells you, for example, next week you're going to run into trouble? It's going to be bad for you. All are talking about a wonderful, future that you have. You will earn money. You will reach your beloved. You're going to trip. You're going to have a, you're going to travel. You're going to have a very beautiful trip to Hawaii. These are just to make people absent-minded. just to make people, shallow, ridiculing their thoughts, ridiculing their own intelligence. Now, in a country that they spend $5 billion, do they spend on scientific research? Do they spend on researches, on studies that will benefit their population, for example? Inshallah, tomorrow night, we will be talking about education and knowledge. One topic, inshallah, left for that. It is either tomorrow or after tomorrow. And I will give you the numbers. I will give you the statistics on how much they spent on research and how much they spent on songs and dancing. And you will see the difference between the two. You see? Unfortunately, superstitious things. As I said, the crystal, even here in this country, why should we go too far? What is the Hollywood stuff? Where is this coming from? Believing in supernaturals and in spirits and in jinns. They tell you don't do such thing because you're going to provoke the jinni. The jinni will come at night at you and do don't spray a dark or a black cat with water because all you will get dimples in your hand. Don't dump hot water in the toilet because this is going to provoke the jinnis. Those superstitious things, coming from where? From me not being aware enough. I don't have much knowledge. My knowledge is nothing but superstition, nothing but myth and rumor. I just heard my great-grandma telling me such and such, and my great-grandpa used to say this. Well, not whatever they used to say was true. No, the world has advanced now. Now every one of us is capable. The entire world is at your outreach, just with little punches, with little keyboard punches. You will get all the information you want. Why don't we try to get that? Why don't we go and seek this kind of knowledge? Unfortunately, many of us fall victim to pranks, to frauds. People will come and take, steal from credit cards, steal from the banks, do such and such. Why? Because we are not very well aware. We don't even know the laws of the country. I live in this country for so many years, but do I know what happens, for example, if I do such and such? What is my right? What is my duties in my family law? What is my duty, for example, toward my parents, toward my children? Do I know those? Unfortunately, Muslims, and in particular the Arabs, they run at the bottom of the list in terms of getting the information, being aware of their surroundings. So one point, brothers and sisters, it has to do with, the level of awareness. The more I am aware, the better I am. The more mature I am. This is one factor. The second one, again, after your big and loud salawat. The second indicator, brothers and sisters, it is the attention and concentration. Is when I pay attention. When I pay attention to the details. When I go somewhere and look it through completely, scan everything. The more photographic memory you have, the more mature you are. When you pay attention to the very, very details, unfortunately, many of us become absent-minded. We go somewhere, we see things, but we don't pay attention to important details. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that says this is the biggest problem of a human being, when they become absent-minded, when they are heedless, they don't pay attention. Look at this ayah. It says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this a problem, call it ghafla. Ghafla meaning absent-minded. You don't pay attention to the details. You're not so much detail-oriented. You need to pay attention. You need to have concentration on things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this as a ghafla. This is a problem as a ghafla. Listen to this. It says, someone who's diagnosed with ghafla, someone who's absent-minded, look what happens to him. Look at the beautiful description in the verse. It says, وَلَقَدْ ذَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. We have saved some seeds in Jahannam for this particular group of people and jinns. Who are those? لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ. They have minds, they have brain that they plugged up, they never use it. وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يَبْصِرُونَ. God has given them eyes, but they don't see them. وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. God has given them ears, but they don't listen with their ears. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. They're even worse than animals, worse than the cattle. Imagine someone gives you the instrument, tell you, look, this is an instrument that you detect, for example, something. Here is a sonar. You can detect the tsunami, for example, and you live in an island. But instead of using the sonar, you turn off the sonar. You don't use it. What benefit would that get you? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in this ayah says that I have given you an instrument in order to find the details, to pay attention, not to be heedless. But unfortunately, those people turn it off. In order to take the biggest deduction from their senses, to see what is this world, and what is behind this world, and who's the source of this world, they don't use it. Therefore, they are considered worse than the cattle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have given you those instruments, utilize them. Be aware of things around you. Look at the details. Pay attention to the details. Sometimes it is difficult. You know, as a student here, my talk to the student. Sometimes it is very difficult to grasp, for example, the words of the instructor, the teacher. But I teach you a trick, I tell you about it. When I was a college student, we used to have those recorders. They were mini recorders. I know, you know, the professor will speak 120 words per minute. So difficult to catch up with it. What do? Tiny little recorder with a mini cassette this big. We put it in front of it. Now, alhamdulillah, mashallah, you have this wonderful mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is called iPhone. You have this iPhone, it can audio record, can video record, can do everything. While you are in the class, record the topic, record the session, record what this instructor. I have myself, tell you out of my personal experience. When I used to do this and record every single bit that the professor, the teacher would say in the class, I was a straight A student. You know, I'm not too smart, average level. When I used to record everything and come back home and listen to the recording, I was a straight A student. On the contrary, in a class that I would not use the cassette, the recording, it was not guaranteed that I would get A or not. What does that tell me? It tells that you pay attention to the details. The more you record, the more you observe, the better you come to understand. The more mature you become. And instead of someone who goes into a palace but he doesn't pay attention to anything, he doesn't see anything, concentrated only on one thing. No, you gotta understand what is going on. There is a beautiful story. Let me tell you this beautiful story after your big and loud salawat. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. They say that there used to be again another nomad, an Arab, who lost his camel in the road between two towns. So he kept asking whoever passes by the road, have you seen my camel? No, we've not seen your camel. Eventually a guy told him, he asked this gentleman, told him, have you seen my camel? He said, I have not seen your camel. But is your camel one-eyed camel? Meaning he has only one eye, the other one is blind? He said, yes. How do you know? He said, is your camel lame? Meaning only one foot working, the other one is broken? He said, you must have seen it. Yes, he's lame and he's one eye. You must have seen it. He said, no, I have not seen it. Tell me, is his tail also cut up? He doesn't have a complete full tail? He said, then you definitely have some problem. You haven't stolen it. Because all those features apply to this camel. You know, he's one-eyed, he's lame, and he doesn't have a full tail. His tail is cut off. You have stolen it. It is you who have taken it. He said, no, I have not taken it. He said, no, let's go to the judge. He grabbed this poor man and take him to the judge. The judge tells him, have you seen the camel? He said, no, I have not seen the camel. He said, if you have not seen the camel, you gave the three features of this camel, and happens to be all those are three true. How did you know those things? He said, look, Your Honor, as I was walking by the road, in the road, I looked at the grass on the road. On one side, there was a plenty of the grass. On the other side, there is no grass. It means that the camel could see only with one eye. He would see the grass on this side was eating. He was not paying attention to the other side. He didn't have enough eye to look at the other side to go after the grass. The grass is only eaten out on one side. That tells me that this camel is one eye. Then I looked at the footsteps of the animal. I saw one footstep heavily engraved, meaning the entire body, the weight of the camel was on this side, while the other one is very shallow. You see, it's only one step, the other step is not shown. What tells you is that this camel is putting his heavy weight on one leg, while the other one, because he's lame, he cannot put, could not lean. Again, is that clear to you guys? You see what I'm saying? He's only noticing one footstep. The other footstep is not there. Look how big he paid attention. Look at the third one. But he said, regarding this cut of tail, usually the dropping of the animal, the defecation of the animal, when the animal has a full tail, the tail goes back and forth, it kicks the dropping, right and left. It all becomes scattered. While this animal had it all concentrated in one area. This guy was an expert in the droppings as well, mashallah. Look how much he pays attention to those details. He said, I looked at those details. I looked at my observations. No grass on one side, only one footsteps, and also the droppings is not uniformly scattered in the streets and in the road. It's only concentrated in certain areas. What tells you that this camel doesn't have it. This is through my own observations. Do we pay attention this much? I remember I read this story, it's a true story, probably 20, 25 years ago. At the time that there were no cell phones, no internet, not much of those technologies. It said that a burglar stole a car within 5 minutes. He stole a car. How did he steal the car? The victim, the burglar was caught later on with the car. But how did he steal it? The victim parked his car in front of the bank, went inside the bank or the store. When he went inside the store for 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, listen, 5 minutes only, he came out, he saw his car invisible. It's gone. It's not there. What did he do? At that time again, there was no cell phone, no internet, no GPS. What he did, he walked to the nearest police station to tell them that my car is stolen. It took him a while, like 2-3 hours. What did the burglar do? Look at the trick. He only came and covered his car. This guy went to the store, the burglar came and covered his car with a cover. This guy came, never thought that it is this car. The car is parked right here and it is covered. He thought that this is another car. He thought that his car is invisible, it's gone. Went after the police. This man came, with full confidence and taking his time and lay back. He opened the doors with his tricks and took the car and went. Why? Because the victim didn't pay attention. The least paying attention. This is the problem, brothers and sisters. You go to the bank, count the money. When they give you money, don't, take it and put it in your pocket. And then when you go out, then you scream, oh, the money is short. The Prophet, peace be upon him, it says that this is your own problem. Al-maghbun, la mahmudun wa la manjur.
they agree. Someone who's been fooled, been sucked, becomes a sucker. He should not blame but himself. He doesn't get any reward, nor he is, sought after. Don't think to be aggrieved, someone to come and plunder your wealth and your money. You consider yourself, you are a victim, and inshallah will reward you. No, Allah will not reward you. So you open your eyes, think. You see, one of the agonizing things that we people in Iraq have, after 11 years of constant bombings, every single day we have explosions in the country, in the capital. We could not catch 10 of them after 11 years, and this is based on every single day, daily basis. Still, people are not aware. Their awareness is not good enough to catch the perpetrators. While you do this in another country, in a matter of a couple of days they find out. What is the source? Where did this come from? Who brought it? How they concocted it? How they detonated it? Everything is all shown. Why? Because of out of the past experience. They pay attention to the details. They look, they search. And the last thing, brothers and sisters, and with that we will conclude, one way to indicate the level of maturity is when we deal with things objectively. Meaning, I don't rush into making decisions. My decisions are always based on thinking. I take deliberate actions. I don't mean that we have to delay. Something happens, we say, oh, okay, let's think about it for 1 year and then we will respond. No, I'm saying that we have to think about it. Sometimes someone will provoke you. Someone does something nasty. He does this to provoke you. He does this so you get out of line. You go and curse him, do something foolish, because he's waiting for such kind of foolish act. But when you think about it, when you meditate, when you act deliberately, with enough intelligence, at that time, you will absorb the problem. You will take, the problem and melt the problem. Many of us, unfortunately, deal with things with our emotion. We become emotional. Oh, because he said such and such, and then I better go and do exactly the same thing. Revert it to him. Pay him back, make him pay back. No, you need to think. Your actions must be deliberate, out of thinking, out of understanding. I will tell you this story of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to see how much the Prophet ﷺ used to utilize this wisdom, this prudence in the advantage of the entire Muslim nation. After your salawat, this is the last time I am asking for salawat. Now that I'm asking for the last time, at least make it so loud. Make me happy. This prudence of the Prophet was demonstrated in the event of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the peace and truce with the mushrikeen. Pay attention to this detail, brothers and sisters. It's a really beautiful story. What happened? The Prophet was in Medina. One day, or one night, he dreamed that he's entering the Masjid al-Haram, the holy house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Mecca. And the dream of the Prophet is absolute truth. Inshallah, in 2 more nights we will be talking about dreams. What a dream is a good dream, what a dream is a bad dream. It's an interesting subject. But when the Prophet sees a dream, experiences a dream, that dream has to be 100% correct. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alludes to this dream. He says, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ لَتَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامَ إِنْ شَاءَ. God will fulfill the promise of the dream that His Messenger have witnessed when they, meaning Muslimin and the Prophet, has entered Masjid al-Haram. The answer, the command of God was to the Prophet that go to Masjid al-Haram, wear ihram and go. Now, what the Prophet did, he concealed the news from his companions, from everyone. Why? He didn't want the news to get leaked to pagans of Mecca, to mushrikeen of Mecca. Why? Because they were so adamant, they were against the Prophet to enter Mecca. Therefore, he wanted to avoid them and avoid any bloodshed. He didn't want to have a confrontation with them. He wanted to peacefully go to Mecca to perform the rituals of Hajj. Simple as that. Therefore, he didn't want the news to get to people of Mecca. Unfortunately, the news got into Mecca. Somehow got into Mecca. Eventually, they dispatched a very shrewd negotiator with an army, with soldiers, to go and confront the Prophet. They stopped the Prophet at an area called Hudaybiyah, in the middle road. They stopped him, told him, you cannot enter Mecca this year. If you want to, we can make a truce with you. Look, now God has promised the Prophet, and the Prophet has told the Muslims, those who have run away from their family in Mecca, that they're going back. When the Prophet promises me, would he lie? Definitely not. So I will start counting every single minute for that day. And I become so excited, me and the rest of the Muhajirin, everybody was so excited. Now the Mushrikeen came and told the Prophet, if you do, we will fight you. What should we do? We'll go into peace, truce. We will have an agreement. The agreement is that you do not come this year. You come in subsequent years, but provided you don't attack us, provided you don't do any advertisement, any propagation of your faith, of Islam inside Mecca. You cannot do this. You have to stay idle. Third, any of people of Mecca who joins you to become Muslim, you have to return it back to Mecca. Hand it over to Mecca so we kill him. You know, those were the very harsh conditions that they have applied. Now the Prophet, when they sat down, of course all Muslims were very agitated, they were upset. Why would the Prophet accept such kind of condition? Eventually, the Prophet sat down. As he wrote, you know, the agreement to start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This shrewd negotiator, his name was Sayyid ibn Amr, Suhaib ibn Amr. This man said, what is this Bismillah? We don't even believe in God. You say Bismillah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Who is this? You have to say things that both agree. We don't agree on such God. Just say Bismika Allahum, oh, in the name of the Lord. Who's Lord? We don't know. You say it is God, we say it is the idol. Now, the Prophet crossed Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and wrote Bismika Allah. Again, it starts with this, that this is a truce between Muhammad, the messenger of God. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I know I brought my promise, but this is the holy name of the Prophet. You have to say salah. Eventually, he said that in the truth, it says that this is Muhammad, the messenger of God. Again, this man said, if we would recognize you as a messenger of God, why would we fight with you? Why do we make a truce with you? We would let you come. We don't believe that you're a messenger of God. Cross out this title. You're not messenger of God. You are only Muhammad ibn Abdullah. You are son of Abdullah. The Prophet told Ali ibn Abi Talib to cross his knees. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, no, Ya Rasul. My hand would not allow me to cross the holy name of you. I cannot do this. The Prophet said, okay, show me where it is, I will cross it myself. The Prophet puts his holy hand on the name of a prophet and he crosses it. Look how it is. In addition to that, look how much a humiliation in terms of in the eyes of Muslims. Still the Prophet accepted this. Eventually, Sayyid himself had a young boy, a young man who had been, joined the Muslims. He said that one condition is that you bring me my young son. He became Muslim, you have to bring me back. The Prophet says, this agreement in the future, not now. He said, no. If you want this agreement to go and becomes valid, you have to give me my son. The Prophet went to his son and told him, go back to your father. The son, you know, he has to listen to the Prophet. He goes to the father in front of everybody slaps the son and beats the son in front of all Muslims. And they could see this, but they could not do anything. Look how agitated Muslims. One of the Muslims said, if at that time, if I have found some people who would revert from Islam, I would have reverted from Islam. I have never doubted my religion, my faith, and the Prophet of Rasulullah until that time. So much doubt has gone inside my heart. Why would the Prophet accept such kind of harsh condition? But look at the Prophet. Where was he thinking? He made this truce, this peace. Look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this truce. Calls, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. This is the greatest celebration. This is the greatest victory that you would get. How did he get the truce? How he got the victory? When he made the truce between him and the pagans of Mecca, the mushrikeen of Mecca at that time, the Prophet had a peace of mind. He sent his messengers, his emissaries to go and to spread the words of Islam to the other lands. In a matter of 1 year, people were flocking Medina to become Muslim. People from every side, from every quarter of the Arabian Peninsula would join Islam in Medina. After this, sorry. You see, at that time, if the Prophet wanted to confront them, to fight with them, they were not more than 500 people. But in the year after, the same Muslims, they became 5,000 people. If the first year, the mushrikeen could face and challenge the Muslims, but in the second year, they could not. Because the Muslims have a growing number. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is the largest victory. This is the biggest victory that you will get. How did the Prophet learn this? Out of prudence. Not dealing with the matter emotionally. Rather, thinking objectively. Having an insight. Have a far vision. Always, when you face a crisis, think. Think in the future. Don't think in tomorrow or after tomorrow. Think what will happen in 1 year. If I go to study for my exam today, what will happen in next year? What will happen to my future? Would I be able to go to medical school? When my GPA from 4.0 becomes a 3.9, does it worth it? Does it worth it then? I go, for example, and spend my time taking Erkila and Shish. I better study. Always think, brothers and sisters. Our actions don't stop at their end. Rather, they go all the way to years. Maybe you do one action and you will feel sorry for tens of years. Why did I do this kind of thing? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here showing us how you gotta be mature and intellectual and follow the footsteps of the Prophet. Allahumma ighfir lil-mu'minina wal-mu'minat wal-muslimina wal-muslimat al-ahya'i minhum wal-amwat ta'ala baynana wa baynahum bil-khayrat innaka mujibu ad-da'awat إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك على كل شيء قدير وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين